Janet Chen spent the first part of her career as a professional musician. She's currently executive director of ProMusica Chamber Orchestra. But after graduating from Oberlin Conservatory and then the University of Cincinnati Conservatory of Music for graduate school, she became assistant principal flute with the Taipei Symphony Orchestra, a position she held for 3 years before returning to the United States. Upon returning from Taiwan, she moved into the arts management field, first as ProMusica's education and operations manager in 2003, followed by its executive director in 2006. She's one of those rare talents who excels in both music and management, and whose skill set was described as, quote, stunning when she was named executive director. One fun fact about Janet is that she began learning to play the piano at age 4, but she switched to the flute in 3rd grade because, in her young mind, she believed her mother, a music professor who also taught piano, would not make her practice the flute. So perhaps to Janet's surprise at the time, her mother did make her practice, and the world's kind of a better place for it, I think. David Danzmayr began his musical journey on piano, initially making it his major at the University of Mozarteum in Salzburg, Austria, before switching to the study of conducting, from which he graduated with highest honors. His professional conducting experience is extensive, spanning roles as guest conductor, chief conductor, and music director for leading orchestras around the world. They're way too numerous to recite here, so I'll just give you a sprinkling of them. One was he is the chief conductor of the Zagreb Philharmonic Orchestra, guest conductor for radio symphony orchestras of Vienna and Stuttgart, and of course he's the music director for ProMusica Chamber Orchestra right here in Columbus. One fact about him that may be unknown to most people is that he has a good sense of humor, which was displayed on a performance I attended. While a featured artist was playing, accompanied by the orchestra, one of her bowstring broke, and the whole performance stopped wait for the repair. Well, as you can imagine, there was kind of an awkward silence that enveloped the whole theater. Suddenly, David turned around, faced the audience, put his hand next to his mouth, as one does when letting someone in on a secret, and said, "That's why I play the piano." The audience laughed, everyone relaxed, and the soloist and the orchestra resumed their performance. If you've not previously done so, you owe it to yourself to attend an upcoming ProMusica performance. They are not afraid to take risks and have created unique and innovative programs, including Naked Classics, which I'll let them tell you about. Like Rotary, they also engage in community outreach and service, and have made Columbus a better place through their Play It Forward program. Most importantly, they make beautiful music. So please join me in welcoming Janet Chen and David Danzmayr.
Good afternoon. I was joking to David that this is his podium for today over here. It's a pleasure to be here, and we thought we would kick it off before we speak to you a little bit more about ProMusica and what we do with a little video that I think will give you a little snapshot about what we do on stage.
ProMusica is an orchestra that really cares and plays with energy. You will come to the concert and you will see people just being explosive on stage and taking risks, and that's a wonderful way of conducting and of making music.
When you're in a chamber setting, the size is really what defines it, right? So you will see a smaller group. It's not just one single thing that stands out, but is the combination of all the components working together as a unit.
Responsibility of every player is much higher. There's a lot more at stake.
3 or 4 bars, maybe?
Yeah.
We're rowing the boat. I think it's going to coast right.
There is just a level of communication and trust.
It might just be luck, but we ended up with a group of people that gel very nicely. It's not just that it's a chamber orchestra. To me, it's that it's this chamber orchestra.
I think it's a testament to the orchestra, what's happening here and the quality of what's happening here.
You know, we're bringing in people from all over the country to be part of this.
St. Louis, North Carolina, New Mexico, California. There's a reason for that.
If you look at every musician, these are really, truly highest level of musicians.
There is something special about ProMusica, and it's hard to put into words. I mean, people care, and they don't stop caring at a certain point.
Not every city has a chamber orchestra. It's a special thing, and it takes a special amount of dedication, and it takes a vision.
The people that we play for is why we play.
You have to get in and give it a try.
What you can expect is extreme determination, highest level of playing, and just an incredible amount of energy from stage.
People are clapping and screaming and cheering and wooing.
Once people experience it, it's like, oh, this is different, this is special.
Performances are always just slightly different than what we rehearse.
There's so much that goes into one note.
It's that sort of shared experience both on and off the stage, totally feeding off of one another.
There's electricity. I don't know how else to describe it.
It's a thrill.
A movement.
Unencumbered.
It's just a completely different experience.
Oh yeah, it's like fireworks.
Thank you. So again, it's a pleasure to be here today with my partner in crime, David. And I also want to just thank for this opportunity to be here to share about what we do. Thank you to Mark and all of the members, and also to our board members, including Lee, who is our board chair, also here today. See, he has a sense of humor. So. We thought we would start by sharing a little bit about our own journeys and how we both got to Columbus and to ProMusica. And then at the end, David and I thought we would come together and share a little bit about sort of the uniqueness of our relationship, and our relationship being that of an executive director and a music director, as this kind of partnership really isn't talked about or spoken about a whole lot. But in the context of how we are both together leading ProMusica and doing the greater work for our community. So a little bit about myself. When I'm meeting somebody for the first time and they say, you know, what do you do? I respond, I'm executive director for ProMusica Chamber Orchestra. And that question usually always follows, oh, do you play an instrument? Do you play in the orchestra? And there's often kind of this look of uncertainty because it's like, what does she mean? She works for an orchestra. I think she should play an instrument, but she said she directs. Maybe she's the conductor. Then my response is usually, I was a flute player in a former life. And that's even more confusing. But I am a former flute player, as Mark mentioned very kindly. I'm originally from Taipei, Taiwan. It's where I grew up and where my family is. And I am very, very lucky and blessed to have been raised in an artistic and a musical home. My mother is a concert pianist, and she's still actively performing. And I have an uncle who was a conductor, and he had a 30-plus year career as music director for the Taipei Symphony Orchestra and the National Taiwan Philharmonic. So music was always part of my everyday life since I was really born. As you heard, I played the piano for a while. I became a rebel at a very early age, decided that I wanted to quit that, and in the third grade decided that I wanted to play the flute. Can't really carry your piano around with you to school. It doesn't look very cool. Carrying on a flute looks a lot cooler. So I did. I started playing the flute in 3rd grade and carried it all the way through high school. And then, as many do, if you're serious about pursuing music, I pursued flute performance for my college and master's degree. So I had really kind of a typical, quote-unquote, path for building a performing career. After graduating, I knew that what I wanted to do is play with an orchestra. There's some musicians who, after graduating, they pursue solo careers, other pursue higher ed degrees to be able to teach. But what I wanted to do, and what I knew, is that I loved orchestra. I loved to collaborate with other musicians on stage. I loved how an orchestra can really function as one unit and deliver sheer power at a certain moment, but then at the same time transition and offer the most delicate phrase that touches people in the audience. And I loved being part of that experience. So after graduating, I decided to move back to Taiwan, and I ended up as assistant principal flute with the Taipei Symphony. And after 3 wonderful years there, my rebellious self kicked in again, and I decided to come back to the United States, landed here in Ohio, to pursue opportunity here. I did what many do, which is to take orchestra auditions after auditions after auditions. As you may guess, there are a lot of flute players in the world. And when you're only vying for one spot, it is very, very challenging. So when I said that I followed, for the most part, a pretty typical path as a musician, suddenly things were not so typical for me. When I was actually at the Taipei Symphony, I had a few opportunities to assist with their administrative duties because I spoke English and they were pursuing contracts with agents in Europe and United States. And it was really there that I became aware and exposed to the fact that there's a whole other world off the stage and behind the scenes that exists for orchestras. There were things like getting people to the concerts. What do you mean they don't just show up? It's marketing. Getting government entities, corporate entities to contribute to the organization, fundraising. All the logistics you can imagine to put on a concert flawlessly. The guest artist needs water. Oh, the piano lid broke an hour before the concert. Oh, the conductor left his baton in the hotel. True story. Then there's the artistic side. What pieces do we play and what do we program? Long story short, amidst taking probably what was my 6th or 7th orchestra audition, an opportunity came up here in Columbus with ProMusica, and it was to run the education programs and concert operations. So I took a leap of faith, and I moved here to Columbus in 2003. And the beauty of having 0 experience in business or arts management meant that I could soak every single thing up during my early time here. What is a grant? What's a marketing plan? What is a budget? We have to follow a budget? When I started, I had no idea about what to do, but I did know about music. And I knew about why it meant so much for musicians to have people in the audience who are supporting you and being moved by what you're doing and hearing what you have to say, and on the other end, reciprocating the love that's coming from the audience. So what I realized is being an arts administrator really isn't that much different from being an orchestral musician. We all need vision, and we all need leadership. We need to be self-aware, what we're playing, what we're doing, every note. We're being accountable, and yet we're functioning as one big entity, speaking one language. It's really no different. And I'm very proud that the entire organization at ProMusica, the board, the staff, the musicians, and all of us, we really embody that same kind of ethos, no matter your background or your walk of life and how you got there. High-performing individuals working as a team to serve our community and world through music. So we're going to touch a little bit later upon what that ethos means and how we translate that from the stage and into the community. So we'll get to that. But at this point, I've now been at ProMusica for a total of 16 years. And so I just wanted to ask, where has ProMusica been and where is it now? This was a wonderful opportunity for me to reflect on the last decade plus in terms of our growth and our impact. So here's some facts. ProMusica just celebrated our 40th anniversary. When we started in 1979, our budget was $42,000. It grew to $1.1 million in our 30th season. And now for the first time in history, we are at a $2 million budget. We serve approximately 28,000 individuals annually. In our lifetime, we have commissioned 67 new works, with our 68th this season, and we have presented over 120 world and regional premieres, meaning we are contributing to the future of our genre. Through our education programs, we serve about 4,000 children, families, and students and youth with free opportunities to access music and arts. And we have 37 of our musicians. That's the size of ProMusica. About a third of them fly in. They reside in Arizona, California, North Carolina, Texas, New York. Another third that drive in, so they live regionally in Cincinnati, Cleveland, Dayton, Chicago. And then a third live here in Columbus. And I mention this because this is, I think, a testament about how we are drawing talent here from all over the country, and those musicians are choosing Columbus and ProMusica to make this their musical home. And we also have one of the most dynamic music directors in the world. David is only the second music director in our history. Our founder, Timothy Russell, served in that position for 34 years, and he laid strong foundation for this organization and has really set us up for success. So David was one of 131 applicants for the music director position. He, at that point, had never really conducted in the US. He was a young, bright, cheery age of 32 when he applied, and he was 33 when we hired him. But all that said, David's footprint is now all over the world. He's now conducted numerous orchestras here in the US, as Mark mentioned, Minnesota, Detroit, Houston, San Diego, Oregon, and Vancouver, just to name a few. But what David has done with the orchestra and the level of playing and artistry is nothing short of breathtaking. We have increased programming offerings. Our ticket sales have steadily increased year after year, an average of 30% over the last 4 years. And we are now actually getting calls from agents and managers from across the country who are asking if their artists can come to play here. In fact, it's not announced yet, but we have a very special guest artist, a bright young star coming in June. And he will be playing with us first before he takes it to the Berlin Philharmonic. So this is the level of artistry that we're bringing in, but also they're choosing ProMusica to be sort of their playground. So with David, and as you saw in the video, we have a creative partner, Vadim Gluzman. He's a violinist. We are very, very lucky to have the level of artistic leadership at the helm. It's kind of like having Bruce Springsteen in your backyard. But a little better, maybe. So I'm going to turn it over to my partner in crime, David, to share a little bit about himself, and then we'll come together and talk about how we argue, how we fight, how we make choices about what's best for ProMusica. So please welcome David.
Hello, everybody. When I say to people that I meet that I'm a conductor, the first question I normally get is a variation of, well, you're a conductor, but what are you actually doing? I mean, you stand on stage, you wave your arms around, the musicians play anyway what they want. And my standard answer to that is, yeah, I stand on stage, I wave my arms around like a madman, the musicians do whatever they want, I get paid for it, I get a nice free workout, and it's a pretty cool job, I love it. Actually, in the UK, the normal first question was, you're a conductor, bus or train? In the US, they kind of like play in bands, so it's different. But the second question I often get is, how do you become a conductor? And that makes me often think, how did I actually end up becoming a conductor? And let me start at the very beginning, at my birth. I won't, bore you with stories about like my actual birth, but my birthplace was kind of fun. It's a little village in Austria called Oberndorf, and that might not say anything to you, but actually Oberndorf is the little place where Silent Night, Holy Night, was composed 200 years ago. And apparently my father was driving the car so crazy with my mom there that she was starting to laugh so much. And when they arrived at the hospital, the doctors wanted to send her back because they thought like, no way this woman is giving birth to a child. And I think the story about the crazy driving of my father and the laughing of my mother has somehow, maybe subconsciously or so, influenced my way of music making. I like high-risk music making. I love people to enjoy themselves on stage. I want to electrify the audience. I don't want the people just to play the notes and kind of like, okay, run-of-the-mill concert, we can go home, we all did our job. I actually always want to take a more risky, more exciting route. Well, you can't start as a conductor because orchestras don't really respect you when you're 6 or 7 years old, so you have to start with an instrument. And my instrument was piano, and I actually wanted to start much earlier. When I was 4, I was begging my father to play the piano, and he was absolutely forbidding it. And I was begging again when I was 5, and he said no. And the reason he gives me is that I was apparently not able to sit still, which is like not a good trait when you need to practice the piano. And so for me, it was actually a very good thing, because when I was 6 and when I was finally allowed to play the piano, I had like this, it was already kind of like something really special. Oh, finally I can get to do it. And my mother, who likes achievement and likes discipline, said immediately, okay, you have to practice at least 1 hour a day, otherwise, the piano is gone again, the piano lessons. And I did. And when I was 10, I was accepted into college, into University Mozarteum, to be a piano student there. And I really didn't like it at all from the beginning. I thought it was a terrible choice by my parents. I thought everything. Classical musicians have a little bit this reputation. I don't know if you've heard it, but we have this reputation of being a bit boring. And it's really not quite true. I know a lot of very, very fun and very nice and kind of outgoing classical musicians, but some are really boring, I gotta tell you. And some of my colleagues swear, and I always wanted to play soccer, and I was such an oddball. I played goalkeeper in soccer one day, and the next day I had an piano exam, and I broke part of my thumb. And my teacher was so shocked, because no other kid ever had done something like that he didn't even yell at me. He was just silent for 10 minutes on the phone. So anyway, with 15, I had enough, and I became, with 15, already a college dropout, which is quite an achievement, I think. And started to play a lot of music from then on. I played in a jazz band on the street of Salzburg, and I played in a tango group, and I played waltzes and polkas, Austrian traditional music, and something miraculously wonderful happened. I earned a little bit of money with it. And so I kind of realized I always wanted to become a conductor, right? When I was 3 years old, I already told my parents I want to become a conductor. But like this click, this moment where you play with your friends, you do something that you really like, and I mean at that time it was like not really payment, it was a pittance, it was basically pocket money. But still, this idea, actually I can do something that I really like, and I do get some money, that was like very impressive for me. So when I was 18, I decided to go back to Mozarteum and study conducting. And it hadn't changed very much. I still felt like an oddball. Later on, I made a couple more friends, and I was very, very lucky, because in that year, Dennis Russell Davis, an American conductor, had taken over the conducting class, and he was riding a motorbike, and he was wearing leather jackets, and he was just like the type of person that I could really relate to and kind of like see a little bit as a father figure. And he guided me wonderfully for the first years. He didn't come every week, but he came often enough, and it started to be a good experience. And then, when I was 21, a letter from the state of Austria, from the country of Austria, came into my home, and it said, you have to do your social service. Every man in Austria has to do it at a certain age, and I forgot to do it when I was 18. I kind of started right to study, and so I took a year break, and I did a year of social service in a company called the Mobile Help Service, which means I went home to people's people who needed help home, some people in wheelchairs, some just, elderly people who needed some help, staying at home. And I did that for a year, and in the beginning it was a shock, I was like, I need to become a conductor, I'm working so hard, and turned out to be one of the best things that happened to me, kind of, gives you a different perspective and relaxes you maybe as a musician a little bit to see it's not all about music. There is lots of other things to do out there in the world as well. And then I went back to college, and I thought, yes, I would just continue in Salzburg, but Dennis Russell Davies was a great teacher, so he knew when it was time for me to leave. So he sat me down, he said, I gotta get rid of you. I was like, what? Why? He said, well, I taught you what I can teach you. You gotta, find a different teacher. And he sent me to Helsinki, to Finland, through the whole winter, which is pretty much the coldest winter on Earth, I think, apart from Siberia. A wonderful country. I can just really recommend it. It's a wonderful place, Finland. And I had a teacher there called Leif Segerstam. Some people said to me, he looks like Santa Claus, very long hair, very long beard. And I normally say, it is Santa Claus out of the movie Bad Santa. I mean, he was swearing, he was drinking, he was wonderful teacher. His method of teaching was to tell his students that we are terrible. He said every time I was going on the podium, he said, you're rubbish. And he said that not in that way, in a much, he used a much more colorful choice of words. And that went on every week. It was the same. Rubbish, terrible, horrible, to all of us. Everybody got the same treatment. And it was incredibly liberating. It was incredibly liberating. It gave me a lot of freedom, because I knew that, every time I conducted, it didn't matter how I conducted. He told me it's terrible. I could do whatever I wanted, right? I can try this, I can try that, I can be free. And it was an incredibly important year, an incredibly important experience, because here I come back to what is a conductor actually doing. A conductor is the leader of the orchestra. If you imagine a sports coach, but the sports coach during the game, let's say a soccer coach, because that's the sport I'm more familiar with, and you see them yelling at their players from the sidelines, and all the players obviously ignore it because they can't even hear what the coach is yelling, and the coach gets very agitated, and it's very fun. As a conductor during the concert, what is our game basically, I have a little bit more control, because I can use my hands to show the players, certain things like how loud, how fast, how intense they should play. And what is the practice for a sports team? We call rehearsal. So I prepare, my team. I can tell them the intention of the composer. Why did the composer write the piece? Why did he write it that way? I need to know the whole score, so 20 lines that I need to really know how to combine it. So I can tell people why they should play a little bit softer at that place, or which voice should come out a little bit more. Yeah. But what it really comes down to is I'm the leader of the orchestra, and I need to lead them. And what I realized in Helsinki is if you want to become a leader, you cannot all the time look to follow somebody, not even your teacher. If you go to your teacher all the time, how should I do this? How should I do that? Can you give me a cookbook with a recipe how to conduct? It's not going to work. So I had to learn really to grow up in that year, and I was, living alone there, and so it was really kind of like a wake-up year, grow up and become a conductor. And from then on I went to Scotland, assistant conductor, which was another kind of training position, but it was a paid position with one of the best orchestras in the UK. And again, the whole story was about the orchestra telling me, David, it's all fine, but even as an assistant conductor, even in this lowly position, you're the leader, you gotta tell us what you want, and you just gotta do it, right? And then I was finished in Scotland, and I applied for a job with a certain chamber orchestra in Columbus, and the rest is history.
How many years ago was that now? Was that 7?
2 years?
No, 7? I think
well, it's my 7th year now.
Okay, 7. I feel like I've known you forever. No, I'm just kidding. Thank you, David. We thought we would talk a little bit about, David talked about leadership, leading the orchestra, and then I talked a little bit about, from the business side, what kind of happens. Should we talk a little bit about how we make this all work?
Yeah, the interesting thing about leading an orchestra is that Janet and I are really both on the same level. So she has, like, you know, the staff, she's the leader of the staff and the finances, she's doing the budget, and I lead the orchestra and decide which music gets played and so, but obviously it's not that simple, because if I want to only play the most expensive pieces and get the most expensive soloists, she will most probably say, well, that's kind of blowing up the budget. On the other hand, if, you know, every kind of time I go and I say, okay, let's do this, Janet just says, well, you know, let's just play it very safe, then I will get frustrated. So we both have to work together, because, you know, where you have in normal companies the one executive director or CEO who leads the company, you basically split that person in half, and then you have music director and executive director both on the same level. So I think that's a kind of unusual setup that.
Which makes it fun for our board. So, you know, we hope you've gotten a little insight as to how we got here. We both love ProMusica very, very much. It is a labor of love, I think, for both of us and all of us. But we have really great people who are involved with the organization, from the musicians to the board to the staff. I thought we would talk a little bit maybe more about our community impact, because I think from both of us what we realize again is if we're on the stage and there's nobody to play to or to play for, we become irrelevant, right? So how do we as an orchestra stay relevant in the world that we live in today? So I wanted to touch a little bit in terms of how we provide service to Columbus. You heard, we all come from some kind of background with access to arts and to music at an early age. And I think we both really believe that that is really fundamental to creating audiences of tomorrow. We have a number of education and outreach programs that we're very, very proud of. And I just want to say all of our programs are free, which is very important, and very important why the fundraising piece is key. We perform at about 15 branches within the Columbus Metropolitan Library System. We do free family concerts. We also do a story time, again, in the branches where we're reaching really pre-K kids. They come to the libraries, and we do about a 45 to an hour program with all of them, bridging literacy and music together. We also have something called Open Rehearsals for Seniors, and we work with about 25 retirement communities in Columbus, and they get bussed into a rehearsal to see us live working at it right there in front of us. We also send about 20 musicians into our local middle and high schools for musicians in schools. And this year, it's actually fun because we have an annual meeting this afternoon, so I was looking at all the stats, but this past season we had about 1,100 students that were reached through musicians in schools. We also do a free summer music series at Franklin Park Conservatory. Again, it's 3 nights. We bring 4,000 to 5,000 people down, again, at no cost. But the last sort of program that I think we're probably most proud of, because I think we kind of came up with it together, it's sort of our brainchild, I suppose. It's called Play Us Forward. The Play Us Forward program was initiated in 2015, and we are working with now 3 charter schools in Columbus. This began because the leaders of the charter schools came to us and said, we have no music in our schools. What can we do? How can you help us? We had about a year brainstorm on this very topic, and what happened is ProMusica decided that we would fundraise, look for instruments, find music teachers, and bring music to these schools during the school day. So when we first started, we had 60 students. We were able to raise money and also ask audience members and community members to find violins or violas or cellos that you may have hiding in your attic or your basement, to bring them out and donate them to ProMusica, and we would in turn use it for this program. So we just completed our 4th year, and at this point we have over 100 kids that have learn the violin, are learning the violin. They are continuing to take it year after year. We have 2 music instructors that go into the classroom twice a week for about an hour long. And this has been really, again, kind of a labor of love for us as we look at reaching students in a population that have 0 access or exposure. The kids that are from this program are coming from neighborhoods that are 95% underserved, highest poverty and highest crime rate neighborhoods. So not every student is going to become a professional musician at some point later in their life, but what this is doing is allowing the kids access and an opportunity to dream. We have heard students say to us, violin makes me happy, or violin helps me not think about what's happening at home. And that, I think, speaks more to about the impact of what we're doing in a single moment, often over than a course of time.
I also have to say I'm always stunned. I go to see them now and then during the year and speak with them and work with them, and Vadim Glutzman does as well, and Janet comes. One thing that always incredible, positively surprises me is the amount of discipline and of work ethic they have in these groups. You see them like learning a violin, and learning a violin is not an easy thing. Like, I come from the piano, I made it easy for myself. But learning a violin is actually, that's a really hard instrument to start. And the way they sit there and they try again and they try again, we found wonderful teachers who kind of like work very, patiently and with passion with them, really have the heart at the right spot. And I think the kids feel that these teachers really love them and really do it for them. But also, like, the response is just wonderful. You see a group of 10, 12 kids sitting there with their violins, playing together, playing scales, learning how to play, repeating, and there is just a lot of silence and a lot of focus there that I think is just wonderful to see as well.
And we've also been sending the students out into their own communities to play. We call them puff-ups. So this past year, we had a group of the students go to the Vets Hospital and perform for the members there. We've had them go into their own library branches and perform for their families. And this is just about sort of the idea of, one, giving back, and how do we help sort of build the idea that music gives, right? Music should be shared, and it should be a joy. And you learn and you craft, and there's a discipline, but at the end of the day, it's a gift. And how do we help sort of instill this idea with the next generation of kids and giving back to the Columbus community? So that's just a little bit about what we do behind the scenes. We perform about 26 concerts throughout the year. Our home is the Southern Theater. We're there October through May. We also do a series up in Worthington at the United Methodist Church. And we have people who are coming outside the 270 Outer Belt from Marion, from Mansfield, Dublin, Delaware, that come to that series. And then we have a smattering of other initiatives that I think might be worth talking about. One is called Naked Classics. It's not that risque, but.
Well, my favorite thing about the Naked Classics, so Naked Classics is a program where we have the presenter of the London Symphony come in. He flies extra to us, and he's working exclusively with us in the United States. And his name is Paul Risman, an incredible, funny and educating person with a wonderful Scottish accent. So if you want to hear a good Scottish accent, that's a good place to go. And he basically talks about the pieces, but he does it in an incredible, entertaining way. He has PowerPoint presentation and slideshows, and the orchestra plays live together with his presentation. That's the first half. And in the second half, we play through the piece of music that he analyzed fully through. So that's the concept. But my favorite thing was when we did the first Naked Classics, we asked our musicians if they have some creative ideas how to promote it further, and our cellists, actually the 4 cellists, made a photo and they wrote like, "Come to our Naked Classics," and they at least appeared to be naked because they had a cello, but all 4 of them on one picture, and they did it themselves. We didn't ask them to do that. It was just like from their own initiative. So our musicians get all creative with how they can help on Facebook and so. But yeah, Naked Classics, that's really something I love because I met Paul in my time in Scotland, and I couldn't wait for bringing him here. And he's really a special person. He's somebody who can make you laugh and learn at the same time, which I think is a wonderful gift.
So David, why don't you want to tell us a little bit about what you see as the future for ProMusica?
Yeah, I think ProMusica has built a wonderful presence here in Columbus, and we want to, of course, keep that and extend on that. But we had our first tour 2 years ago to Chicago. Played in Chicago, and we have had invitations in the past and want to follow them more in the future for touring, bringing ProMusica outside, having a more global presence, acting as artist ambassadors for Columbus, so that people see how exciting and how wonderful Columbus as a city is. And we want to start a big recording project, which we hopefully will do in the next 2 to 3 years. From my side, that's the 2 most exciting things, and then of course, continue to build on Players Forward and maybe find some couple of. We started this year with sessions, ProMusica Sessions, which was also a dream project from me and Janet from the beginning. Took us only 7 years to kind of make it work, which is where our musicians go to restaurants, bars, and play classical music, but in a bar setting where you can eat and drink and enjoy yourself in that way. So we're trying to come up with all kinds of different things. But yeah, certainly in the next couple of years we will work on a strong international presence, because very clearly, listening to this orchestra, our musicians are just incredible. I mean, I conduct all over the country. I conducted Los Angeles Chamber Orchestra. I know a lot of other chamber orchestras also in Germany, and I mean, ProMusica is by far the best. We just have incredible players.
This is fun for me because I just get to ask David questions. We'll ask a couple more, and then we'd love to open it up for any questions from all of you. So, David, well, actually, let me ask this. How many of you have been to ProMusica? Oh, good. Thank you. If we ever come back, we hope to see all the hands raised. So for those who have not been to ProMusica, how would you describe what it's like to come to a concert? What can they expect?
Fun. No, it's going to be, so what we are trying to create on stage is not just. So I think the following, thinking about concerts, some people is to relax or so, but for me it's like that. If I want to relax personally, right, really personally, I just lie on my couch at home and try to do nothing, okay? My wife likes to kind of binge watch Netflix if she wants to relax. I just like to stare in the air or maybe kind of hang out on my computer, but that's for me relaxation. So I want to actually, when somebody comes to my concerts, want to add something. I want to give something more. And that is that, for me, music is an incredible magical thing. When you think that, for example, Beethoven wrote a piece 300 years ago and had a certain idea, a certain emotion that he was feeling, that he was writing into this music. And then you play it nowadays, 300 years later, and you feel that when you recreate it. You feel it when you play it, but you feel it when you hear it. And that's, for me, what I really want to create on stage, is that when you come to our concerts, you feel all kinds of emotions, from joy to sadness. It should be a big lift, that afterwards, when you leave the concert, you have the feeling, wow, instead of one hour, I went through kind of an incredible experience. And that's what I love about ProMusica, is that our musicians just follow all the way in that way. Everybody kind of takes risks, everybody plays from the heart, and I think really the thing that I would describe most is when you come to a ProMusica concert, you will feel something. You will feel an energy, and you will feel a real connection to stage. You will feel connected to the musicians, and you will kind of really just get a strong emotional experience.
Our patrons, I think to some extent feel it's really like a family. Okay, yep. So we've even had instances where a patron would come up to me at intermission and say, "Hey, your principal cellist, his shoes look like they need a little polishing." And it was a true story. But that's what makes, I think, ProMusica unique, is that we welcome everyone. It doesn't matter who you are, where you're from, what you look like, what you're wearing. We just want we want you to feel something when you're at the concert. And again, it is part of being like a big family where you like some things, you don't like some things, and that's okay because that's a shared experience. When we talked in our video about it's a shared experience, if we played on stage and nobody was there, that would be ultimately super boring and kind of sad. And if you were there and you were not feeling anything from the stage, you would tell. I mean, how many concerts have you been to where you're sitting there and you're not feeling what's happening on stage? And we realize everyone's time these days is so precious, so that's why we are really, really focused and I think innately able to bring sort of that level of energy and love of what we do and carrying it out from our music. So you'll have fun. I guess,
Q&A.
should we have some, is there any questions? Yeah? Okay. You pick. You're the,
yes,
okay?
Sorry.
Yeah?
You could have called yourself the Columbus Chamber Orchestra. What's the story behind your name?
So the question is, what is the story behind ProMusica Chamber Orchestra? And Janet will have to answer that because I don't know.
So from what I understand, when we were founded, it was called the Columbus Chamber Orchestra. And then I'm not really sure specifically the reason, but I think that there was probably some decision to really distinct the organization from the Columbus Symphony. It is completely two separate entities. And so not long after that, it was maybe about a year, then the name was changed to ProMusica, and ProMusica in essence, definition means for music or forward music. And my understanding is that was the reason why it became ProMusica Chamber Orchestra.
Yes?
Yes, follow up on that. Can you explain like a drone's level view of the performing music arts associations? You have Jazz Arts, the Columbus Symphony, you have quartets that look like go to bars and so forth. And so can you kind of give us a view of how that's organized in Central Ohio?
So the question is how, from a bird's eye view, it would be like to describe the general, and you're referring to the musical arts, right? Yeah, the musical arts scene in Columbus and Central Ohio.
Yeah. I think Columbus is really blessed to have all different kinds of arts organizations. As you mentioned, we have a jazz arts group, we have the Columbus Symphony, we have Opera Columbus, we have Ballet Met, we have ProMusica. We all, by definition, I think, perform different types of music per se. There is some blend, especially with the world we live in now, there's a lot of crossover. We often have some jazz musicians that will play at one of our gala concerts and vice versa. But I just want to mention, not every city has a chamber orchestra, and I think that's something that maybe we don't talk about enough. Really, if you look at the landscape of the United States, there's only a few major cities that have a professional chamber orchestra. LA, New York, Houston has one. So that's really quite special, I think, for us. And I think it's just all about the experience, right? So when you go to a Columbus Symphony concert, there's a lot more musicians on stage, whereas when you come to ProMusica, we're more intimate, we're a little more nimble. We, as a chamber orchestra, also have a little bit of flexibility to even reduce further in size, so quartets or quintets. I don't know if you want to talk about like the idea of being a chamber musician.
So sometimes, because you refer to quartets, so sometimes when you see a quartet, it might be our ProMusica musicians, for example, so that some of our concerts are really in this small level, some are the full chamber orchestra, and sometimes we send our quartets sometimes, or even sometimes a single musician who plays, but is still part of what we are doing. So the arts, we speak to each other and we're on friendly terms, all of us, but there is no roof organization that we basically are organized under. We are all our own organizations that just try to kind of like help each other and work as good as possible with each other. Yeah. One more?
Well, yeah, wrap it up because we got prizes.
Okay.
One last question.
Okay.
One last question. Yes, sir.
Please talk to us about your financial management record, Chen.
The question is about the financial management record.
And Chen has been involved for a long time, and we're grateful. We are very, very proud to have had a very solid financial history. We have operated in the black for most of our history, give or take a couple of years here and there. And we talk a lot about scale, pun on a musical word, but I think it's very true, is as we look to grow, scale is important because we want to be sustainable. If we take the leap too far, I mean, as you can see, often how quickly things can crumble, you know. But the fact that we've now doubled our budget size, we have a very healthy endowment, but we have big aspirations. So checks and balances, right? This is where David will say, hey, I want to do this project. I'll say, not next year. Let's develop the legwork to do it 2 years from now. Or on the flip side, I will say David is one of the few music directors who I'll say, oh, we can spend the money, and he'll be like, no. And I'm like, what? They're not all music and directors and conductors are like that, which I'm very grateful for. So in terms of financial landscape, we challenge each other, but we bring each other back, and we look at really, does this project matter in terms of the budget and the money it's going to cost? And if it's worth it, we'll figure out how to do it. If not, we know we have choices and priorities. So.
I think we're trying to be brave as possible, and a little bit crazy, but also very realistic at the same time. I think that's really the balance we're trying to strike, that, you know, we're brave enough to really do something new, to really be exciting, but at the same time not just like unravel everything.
Mm-hmm. Oh, thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
If anybody else ever wants to come to ProMusica, just find us. So, thank you so much for your time. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you all, and thank you for the presentation. All right, we got to wrap up quickly. I'll point out they talked about fun, and I'll point out our thing at the bottom where it says we're here because it is fun. It's why we do it. So thank you all for coming.